You are welcome to this our lesson, and this time now we are going to see why is it important as translators to even know why we need an invoice and how do we go about preparing an invoice. It is important to remember that when we receive a job, when we receive a file to translate, before even we begin translating the file, it is important to agree on the terms. That is to say, what is the deadline for the file to be translated, and also what is the payment for that very file, and even how will the payment be made, and what is the deadline after which we are going to be paid. These are essential questions that need to be addressed before even you begin translating a file. And today now we are going to see this sample invoice. How do we fill it out and send it to the customer? Because when you receive a job, as we said, please, what I mentioned before need to be addressed all before you begin translating. And in our case here, let me lower this page. We are going to take the case that maybe we did some jobs in the course of, for example, let's say the month, you did some jobs, and then after doing them, you were able now to have some jobs that were done. Let me open a file here and let's see together how you receive some jobs from the customer, and then when you did the jobs, you were able now to prepare them. Let's see that in this our case, you were able to do job number 1, job number 2, and then job number 3. Take this case. Let's go back now to our invoice. Let me open the invoice. This is a sample invoice. This is just a sample to help you see how you go about filling your invoice. For example, we assume that this is the invoice of Mr. Mael Andrew. And this is the city where he lives. He lives in Douala. The street is New Bell Street in Cameroon. And then you put here invoice. And then here now you have to specify bill to. That is to say, to whom are you addressing this bill? We assume that he is addressing it to a company called, for example, Lingual. That is Lingual Services Company, represented by Mr. Akash Pryan, who is the Assistant Project Manager. And this is the email of the company he's doing the work for. And then this is the email of the account department of the company. And this is the mobile number. And then this is the landline number of the company. This is their Skype and even their website. This information are just for illustration purposes, please. Meaning that this information you will get them from the company. You ask them if you don't have it. Please, I need all the detailed information about your company, and they will send it to you. If they don't send it to you, that's already a red sign of alarm, because any normal company will willfully send you this information so that you can prepare your invoice. At this other level now, you have now the invoice. You put the number. We assume that this is our invoice number 4. Now the invoice date, we assume that this is the date of the invoice. We are doing it on this June 16, 2025. And then we have now to put now the terms. What are the terms you agree with the company? In this our case, the payment will be initiated within 45 days of receipt of invoice. It means that when you finish the job and then you send the invoice, you even need to agree with them. When will you send the invoice? Because some company, any job you do, you send the invoice for that particular job as you are sending the job along. Other companies prefer that You do all your jobs for the month, and then you try to put them in one invoice at the end of the month. You just issue one invoice that you send to them for the payment to be initiated. This, you have to agree with the company. In this our case, we assume that they are going to initiate the payment 45 days after they receive your invoice, summarizing the work you did for them. Now let's move here now to the description. You have to describe what type of job was done. Is it translation, editing, proofreading? You have to signal it here. Let's take now our case here. We have opened now our file. This is it here. This is the first job. This is job number 1. What do I need to do? I just need to right click. And then I go where I have to rename it. One is renommé in French. I just click on it and I copy the name of the job. Copy it. Let me lower the page. Then I come back at this level. Let me replace this. This is what was just here for illustration purposes. I replace now. Let me right click and then I paste what I copied. Job number 1. Let's assume that job number 1 is, let's say, 4,000 words. And let's assume that in this our case, we are having translation and editing work at the same time. Some of them we have to translate. Some we just need to edit the files. This is job number 1. We assume that we have 4,000 words. And then we assume that this one is editing work, and then you were paid $0.01 per word. Let's leave it like that. And then we assume that for that job, they gave you $35. Let's go now and take the second file. The second now was job number 2. I will still click on it, then I right click, and then I go where I have rename or renommé. I click on it, then I copy now the name of the job, go back to my invoice, lower it, put dash, then I right click and I paste. Let's assume that this time now the job was, let's say, 2,300 words in this our case, and that in this case now, instead of being paid this 0.01 that we had here, we were paid 0.03 because it was a translation, $0.03 per word for translation, because this one is a translation that we did. Let's assume that in this case now it is $65. Let's go and take the third and final job we did for that month. Let me right click, then I rename it. Let me copy it, and then I go back to my invoice. Then I lower this one. Let me put a dash. Then I paste it there. Let's assume that this is also still a translation, and then this one I did, let's say, 9,000 words. In this case, it's just an illustration, please. Let me try to put some gaps here so that the payment per words can really fit in the spaces. Put some gaps there. Okay, I can now bring down this number of words to number 2. And I bring this one down for number 3. Yes. And then this one now is for the second job. Now let's assume that this one was also a translated file. It was $0.03 per word. Let's lower this price to be on the same line with job number 2. Then I put another line here now for job number 3. And we assume that this one was, let's say, $200. I mean, I have 65 and then 35. That is 100, and then I have 200. That will be 300 total. Now you need now to put what is the language pair. Let's assume that in this our case, the job was from English to French. And when did you begin? Let's assume that you began the first job on the 16th of that very June 2025. And what was the deadline? Let's assume that the last one you did was to end on the 28th of June 2025 at 0 hour GMT. That is the hour you were to finish the job. And let's assume that the total of number of words is, let's say, 13,000 words that you did. And here, let's assume that you work was $300 that you work in total for that month. You have to put it there. Then you go down. You have some notes. You have now to specify on your invoice. Payment through, you need to indicate. Will they pay you through what they call money bookers, which is now called Skrill? Some company, they pay through Skrill. If that is the case, you have now to specify your Skrill ID here. This is just an example here. Or will they pay you through Western Union? You indicate the town where you live and the details. Or will they pay you through PayPal? Because other companies, they pay through PayPal. You have to agree with them. If that is the case, you have to put your PayPal ID here. Or will they pay you through bank transfer? If that is the case, you need not to put your bank information. That is to say, you need to put your full name. You need to put the name of your bank. You need to put your bank account number. As I said, these are just for illustration purposes. You need to put your bank code, your counter code, your RIP key, the SWIFT code of your bank, the IBAN of your bank, and then you need to put the total. In our case here, we said it was $300. And then you need now to put this note, the payment not yet made, because you are still sending the invoice. Payment has not yet been made. You put $300, and then you will specify the terms and conditions here. As agreed upon, the payment will be made within 45 days from this very date that you fill the invoice, that is June 16, 2025, through either of the ways indicated above. If they pay through all these means above, you can specify this. If they pay through only one of the means, you will just specify only that means here. And then under here, usually some companies require that you sign electronically. Some don't require. It depends the agreement you have with them. Like in my case here, I had to sign electronically. Just sign on a piece of paper, then you can scan it to keep it. Every time you feed your invoice, you just paste it here. They will depend the conditions you have with the company. Once you do all of this now, you need now to do what? You need now to save it. You click on this button to save the changes made. And then depending on what you agree with the company, if it is to be sent along with the job you just did, you do that. If it is to be sent at the end of the month, after compiling all the jobs you did, then you wait at the end of the month, you compile all the jobs in one invoice and you send. Please, never forget that if you don't issue your invoice, then you will not get paid. And also it's good to keep in mind that still talking about invoices, there are some companies also that you will not fill the invoice manually like this, but they have a system where they will create an account and then you will fill your information on their system and then you just click on send, or you just put the information of the jobs you did. And everything will depend on the discussion you have with the company. And I'm sure that this really helps you to see the importance of always preparing your invoice when you do any job so that you can get paid for your hard work. Thank you for really paying attention.